Today, I love that. Today, you're going to turn it over to a video, which we've never done before.
I know, isn't
but I
that
think
cool?
It's going to work.
Yeah.
So you'll
From
say
AARP.
Yeah, you'll say after you get through this good stuff right here. To introduce our panelists, let's hear from Jenny Carlson, the new State Director of AARP Ohio. And Jenny will appear on the screen. It's pre-recorded. It's about 2.5 minutes. Once Jenny starts, you can pack up and go.
Okay.
And then Tasha will take your place.
Okay, cool. I don't need to introduce Tasha.
No.
Okay.
Because that's part. Jenny will end with Jenny's video ends with her introducing Tasha.
Okay.
So by the time she gets to that,
okay,
you're already sitting down, and then you're done.
Yeah.
Because Sandra is going to close.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Everybody good? Yeah. Hopefully, yes, we are good. Oh, you've got your note cards and everything.
I went and got a note card. I was tricking everything on the scene.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Columbus Metropolitan Club. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to Columbus Metropolitan Club. CMC connects people and ideas through community conversations at forums just like this one every week. Yes, because there's a Wednesday in every week. I'm Tony Bell, President and CEO of Phoenix Consulting Company, and also a very proud board member of the Columbus Metropolitan Club Board of Trustees. For those of you joining us via live stream, we're coming to you from the beautiful Ellis in Columbus's historic Italian village. And welcome to each and every one of you, our live stream members, our members, visitors, and guests. Thank you. If you scan the QR code that's at your tables, you can learn more about today's forum. You can also take a short survey, which we'd appreciate. We like data. And also see many organizations that support your CMC nonprofit, your nonprofit organization. We are not for profit. Yes, we do accept charitable charitable donations. So speaking of supporters, we are so grateful for today's supporters. AARP Ohio, Franklin County Board of Commissioners, the Isabel Ridgeway Foundation, and today's forum partner, King Business Interiors. We're so grateful to the presenting sponsors of today's live stream, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, our live stream partner, the Columbus Dispatch, and our host, the Ellis. Every CMC forum takes a village. Yes, it takes a village not only to raise a child, host a family, build a community, but also be part of CMC. So let's thank everyone for supporting today's programming. So I wanted to come up here and go, are you ready to rumble? But instead I'll say, are you ready for retirement? Great, I got a couple of people with their hands up. I'm ready. Yes, yes, lottery, please. Because retirement, if you're lucky, if you live long enough and you're fortunate enough, retirement is coming. So while not everyone in Central Ohio is ready to clock out for the last time, the region will soon have more residents reaching the age of 65 than starting kindergarten. Hooray! Hooray for new beginnings. I feel like we should, well, there are classes for how to retire. It's a situation with huge implications for employers, school districts, healthcare providers, and taxpayers, and it's the subject of today's forum. To introduce our panelists, let's hear from Jenny Carlson, the new State Director of AARP Ohio.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jenny Carlson, and I'm the State Director of AARP Ohio. I'm honored to welcome you to this event sponsored by AARP Ohio in collaboration with the Columbus Metropolitan Club, an organization renowned for fostering dialogue and community engagement on critical issues. Today's topic is Columbus ready for retirement? It is incredibly important as we consider the future of our communities, from babies to baby boomers and beyond. We all benefit when the places we lived are designed for the rest of our lives. AARP is a preeminent organization advocating for 100 million Americans aged 50 and older. Our recent voter poll confirms that we have consistently heard from years on end from our members. The vast majority of people 50 or older want to remain in their current home or community as they age. By 2030, 1 in every 5 Americans will be 65 or older, and the population of people 85 and older will increase dramatically to almost 10 million. This trend impacts every state and nearly every community, including Columbus. Large cities like Columbus need to take proactive steps to prepare for the growing number of retirees. By partnering with local leaders and policymakers nationwide, AARP is committed to helping create communities with a better civic, economic, and social life for residents. AARP Livable Communities work to educate and inspire elected officials, local leaders, planners, citizen activists, and other opinion leaders. We help them identify their community's specific needs and then create and implement the programs, policies, and projects that will help meet the needs. Additionally, AARP Ohio recently released a 2024 statewide election survey, revealing that candidates for president, U.S. Senate, and state races should pay close attention to Ohioans age 50 and older. Ohio residents age 50 and older make up an outsized portion of the electorate. Thank you for joining us today as we explore whether Columbus is ready for retirement and work together towards building a better community for all. And now I'd like to welcome today's distinguished panelists. Dr. Holly DeBalco-Shoney, Director of Research for the Age-Friendly Innovation Center at The Ohio State University College of Social Work. Katie White, Director of the Central Ohio Area Agency on Aging. Kalitha Williams, Outreach and Advocacy Manager for AARP Ohio. Shananda Wingo, Director of the Franklin County Office on Aging. And of course, our host, Tasha Booker, Senior Vice President of External Engagement with City Year. Tasha, welcome back to CMC, and we look forward to today's conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you to AARP Ohio. So according to the City of Cincinnati's 2021 report, components of good old age include income security, health and health care, long-term services and support, housing, family support, civic engagement and employment, and an age-friendly community. However, our current system was never designed, it just happened. So let's set the stage for our conversation. Our region will soon have more residents reaching the age of 65 than starting kindergarten. We have new companies coming, new organizations every day, and new citizens. Shonda, let's start with you. Can you tell us about the current age demographics in Franklin County, one, and what was the situation like in the past and where are we headed?
Thank you. So you've heard all the statistics. Simply put, years ago, I think around 2011, 2012, the conversation really started around the gray tsunami. And the prediction was that by 2050, we would have more seniors than kindergartners. But for those of us who are practitioners in this work, we saw the needle move to 2040, and now it's closer to 2030. So again, by 2030, the expectation is that there will be more seniors than there are kindergartners. And when you look at that and you think about that statistic, if you compare to what we're doing to what Japan is doing, they've decided to close many of their daycare centers and open up aging centers because their population is aging and they're a few years ahead of us. And so when we think about that, we know currently that there's about 165,000 residents in Franklin County that are 60 and over. I like to focus on 60 because the Office on Aging is a levy-funded agency, and we start our services at the age of 60. That's the benchmark for us. And so when I, look at that number, I'm like, okay, so do we have the right infrastructure in our city? Can an aging grandparent that is raising grandchildren, because there's 283,000 young people that live with an older adult in Franklin County? Not asking anyone to answer the question, but the questions I have are like, what park in Franklin County can an aging grandmother with mobility issues take her grandchildren to enjoy a green space? And that's why we're in this conversation, and that's where we're in this space, because we need to have a better understanding of what our community needs are, and do we have the right infrastructure, the right policies, and the right resources in place to support this aging population. By a show of hands, how many of you are caring for an older adult or have cared for an older adult? You feel this every single day. You know how aging impacts your daily lives. And this is a conversation that I am committed and my agency is committed to uplifting, because we need everyone to understand that it's not an aging problem, it is a community problem, and we all have to brace for this impact. My last shock factor that I like to introduce, and whenever I do this, I always leave people in awe, but in less than 6 months, Generation X begins to turn 60. Yes, yes. And so for the first time ever, we will be looking at aging for the silent generation, the greatest generation, our baby boomers, and Generation X. And each generation has a different set of needs. What worked 30 years ago will not work for our Generation X. And so we need to really start thinking about our policies. We need to start thinking about our funding allocation. We need to really start thinking about, if I employ caregivers, do I have the right policies that allow this sandwich generation to care for their parent as well as their children?
Right. So let's just get direct. How prepared is Franklin County for the aging population?
I'll take a go. Well, I think Shonda does such a great job of really laying out the foundation of so many things that we need to be thinking about, because it really is complex and it's not a one-size-fits-all for individual needs. So I would say that Franklin County is definitely on the way to being prepared. I mean, if you look around this room, if you look on this panel, the collaborations among the key agencies in aging are extremely strong, and I think we're all dedicated to one another to making sure that we are creating a system that doesn't allow for a lot of people to slip through the cracks. So do we have work to do? Yes, every county does, right? And COAAA serves 8 counties. We're an 8-county region. We all have work to do, but we'll almost never be done. But the point is, we're all dedicated to listening to the community, to understanding what the needs are, and then working together to not duplicate services, to create what's needed.
Yeah, I'd love to add to my colleagues and share that actually the city of Columbus in 2015, to large part because of Director White, became one of the first designated age-friendly communities in the state. So the World Health Organization has identified 8 domains, everything from housing to social engagement to transportation, employment, volunteerism, factors that make a community a good place to age. AARP is the US affiliate for that. So Columbus became formally part of the network, which says the leaders in our community are committed to becoming more age-friendly, one of the first in the state. Now, there are 32 other communities in the state of Ohio who are part of that network. There are 900 across the US, 1,600 globally. So we are in a great position. Franklin County joined the network in 2018, an early adopter. So that commitment from our elected officials, from our older adult leaders here, I believe Fran Ryan is in the room and was instrumental in getting the age-friendly movement started and grown here in our community. So we have that commitment. We are service rich. We have expertise and ability. We collaborate. Our challenge in Franklin County is to think about doing things differently. as Shonda noted, the past is not going to be like the future. Traditional retirement, where you sign in and you sign out rather, and you're done, those days are over. Many individuals want to continue having purpose in volunteering and working, flexible schedules so that they can do the caregiving. So I think the question is for our community, are we ready to do things differently? Are we ready to have conversations with CODA? I know some of our CODA friends are here. CODA, housing, code enforcement, places that are not in our traditional aging services network in which services are provided. So we've got the pieces for the recipe. We just need to put them together in new, innovative ways.
Excuse me, and I would like to echo what many of my colleagues on this stage are sharing. On your table is information about AARP's Livability Index. And it is a series of criteria that we've put together to really measure and designate how local communities are embracing communities that are livable for people as they age. And the good news is Franklin County is at the top of most communities in the country. And much like we've said on this panel, we have great collaboration and great commitment to help people live as they age, as they choose. I also want to echo the comment that, aging is going to look different. It's very individual. I think about my own mother who turned 65 this year. I had a vision that she would move in with me and we'd live like the Golden Girls, like Dorothy and Sophia. But that's not what she wanted. She said, Khalifa, I want to continue to live in my home independently as long as I can. And how do we have supports and services in our community so that people can live out their own vision of aging in their community?
Thank you. So you talked about Franklin County being well positioned, for our graying and aging populations. And Dr. Holly, you also talked about there's pieces and parts. What are some of the policy and infrastructure changes that are needed in our community to meet the population?
I'm happy to start and to answer that with a process response, which is we need to ensure that what we call the experience experts are at the table. So something that I may think is a good idea as a scholar, as an educator, may not be the same thing that older adults who may look different from me, who may have a different social positionality than I am, different identity that I have, those things may not work for them. We have a more diverse older adult population than ever before. We have a significant number of immigrants and refugees who are in our communities that we are serving. We need to take advantage of the knowledge and expertise that individuals with lived experiences have. We have a video that actually Katie was involved in getting filmed originally, where one of our older adult residents here in German Village made the comment that she didn't know who put the grab bars in the bathrooms, but they did not know what they were doing. And that's just indicative to the importance of bringing together practice experts, technical experts, research, evidence, with the knowledge and experiences of diverse groups of people in our community who are trying to live their best lives day to day. And I do think it's important to acknowledge that we have a lot of folks who have not been given the same set of ingredients that some of us have had as we age. And recognizing what are those pieces and parts where we need to support them so they can make as delicious of a meal as they age as all of us can.
Okay. So, Khalifa, this is to you. AARP is the leading voice for seniors. What should we be advocating for our senior population?
Everything. That is a really broad question. I know when I think about my work, and I lead the state and federal policy work for our office with our great team of staff and volunteers, some of whom are here with us today. I always want to acknowledge our volunteer superstars. And we're working on a variety of issues. I mean, I know we'll probably talk more about housing, but there was just an article in the Columbus Dispatch yesterday talking about how so many people are unable to afford their increased property taxes. I was elated to hear that the county treasurer is taking the onus of halting all tax lien sale. Yeah. Of halting tax lien sales so that people who are delinquent in their property taxes have the opportunity to access one of her payment programs. At the state level, we are advocating for policies to help people pay their property tax burdens. Those two specific policies are to implement a tax deferral program, which is actually in effect in over 20 states across the country. What it does is allows people to delay paying their property taxes until they transfer the sale of their home. Another important policy is a property tax circuit breaker, which would allow people to pay any property tax increases based on their income. You know, I was just sharing with the director, my mom and I recently took advantage of a great senior option services, which is paid for in part by a levy that is funded through property taxes. But we have to find a balance between making sure that local community programs that are important to us do not crush the weight of people who are on fixed incomes, many of our older adults in our community. So that's just one, and I'll cede to the rest of my colleagues.
Katie.
Yeah, I'd like to add sort of in between what Holly said in listening to the community and planning, and then what Kalitha mentioned about advocacy. In between there, we have to start getting innovative, we have to start being creative, and we have to start trying different things. So looking at pilot programs, how can we utilize funding to listen to the community, create something new, show that it works through really measuring impact and looking at research and data through this critical lens to say, here's another idea of how we can utilize funding. And it's okay if it doesn't work, but I do feel like in between knowing what we need and advocating for those results, we have to start trying some different things and being really dedicated to measuring impact.
I think advocacy in itself is a key. A collective impact is powerful. And every one of you sit in a seat and have a voice and experience, whether it be you were having a hard time trying to figure out how to enroll into Medicare, or whether you were having a hard time trying to place your older adult in a nursing home. Like, your voice is what that advocacy is going to be. Like, we need to hear from you. We need advocates throughout the entire community. In my agency, we have 120 people, but we serve well over 60,000 a year through our local programs as well as our grant programs. We can't do all of this work by ourselves. And so we need every last one of you to advocate from the seat that you sit in, ring the alarm, call your politicians, let them know what you're experiencing and what you're running into. Do not suffer in silence. Raise up those issues, be vocal, come out and help us in this fight. The other piece that I like to advocate for is, if you know a senior, if you live next door to one, just talk to them. See how they're doing. Ask them if they need anything. Oftentimes when we go out in my agency, we do a phenomenal job in outreach. Last year we did over 460 events and was able to reach more than 2 million people just on that information advocacy. You may not be a senior today, but take advantage of this information and make sure that the seniors that are in your life are able to access our programs and our services.
I'd love to lift up a point that Chanda just made, which is as we think about program and policy level interventions, the importance of thinking about all of us as individuals and what our responsibilities are. In fact, we know that one of the strongest predictors, my colleagues hear me say this all the time, one of the strongest predictors of the length and quality of our lives are social connections. Social connections. Of those factors we can control. That's more important than diet, exercise, smoking. How many people do you see every day? How many people do your neighbors see every day? Do you have a small group of people that you can count on? Is there a small group of people who can count on you? That is something all of us need to do, is to nurture our relationships with one another, with our neighbors, with our friends. That is going to have, of those factors we can control, one of the biggest influences. My colleague who's here, Christine Happel, says, aging is so cool, everyone's doing it. And in fact, it is one universal experience for all of us. So that is the one universal experience. As we think about differences among us and similarities, we are all aging if we're fortunate enough to do that, to get there.
That's right. I became aware of the wonderful resources in Franklin County when I and my family was in a crisis with my grandmother whose dementia is advancing. I suddenly became her caregiver this past March, a title I never thought I would have to wear. And I had to call and reach out. And the Franklin County Office of Aging went as far as to call the hospital where she had been improperly discharged to say, do not discharge her, and actually opened up a case to put a do not discharge on her file so that we could take the time to find her a home, a safe place, very rapidly. And I tell you, I would not be standing here, as calm as I am now, not having had those resources. So I tell you, this is such a valuable resource in our community. Shonda, you introduced this topic, and you also, talked about not doing this alone. Let's bring in the employers into this conversation, right? Because we're not going to get there by ourselves. So for the first time in our history, our workplace spans 6 generations, right? From the octogenarians with President Biden, right? We see him, he's 81. Of the silent generation, they are still working. In many cases, still holding on to key global leadership roles, to the teenagers of the emerging generation Alpha. I have one. I think they're aliens, but In between are the baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, which we often refer to as millennials, and Gen Z. How can employers support their aging workforce in preparation for retirement? I mean, across the gamut, from benefits to information to retirement, flexibility.
All of those things. I always want to bring caregivers to the forefront. And one of the reasons that I am passionate about our caregivers is it's a birthright. For those of us that sit in that seat, we just step up to the call to action and we just go, right? We may not sleep well, we may not eat well, we may not do anything for ourselves. And so as an employer, understanding that you're going to see more and more and more households live in a sandwich generation. I am one too. In my household, my mother, she's 69. Me, I have a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 10-year-old. There's a lot going on in my house. Between Megazords and reading books every single day. But I also came into this unexpectedly. 2 months after I assumed this role, my father had a stroke. Literally the day before, he was a private practicing attorney. My parents were my parents. Even though I'm in my 40s, I was still a child in a child's place. Catapulted right into that understanding, like there were so many things that were going on with them that I was not aware of. And so for employers, being understanding, looking at your policies, being lenient, those flexible schedules, are you able to offer additional time or additional policies that give caregivers the flexibility that they need in order not just to be caregivers, but to take care of themselves? Because in order to continue doing what you need to do, you have to be a pillar in your strength in order to carry on and move forward.
To make a recommendation on a policy prescription that we're working to advance nationally and in Ohio for employers. We're actually, in Ohio, we're in a retirement crisis. We have about 2 million workers who do not have access to an employer-based retirement program. In Ohio, we have, hundreds of thousands, several people who their sole source of income is Social Security. And we know that is not enough to retire on. Across the nation, we have been advancing state-facilitated retirement savings programs, which are able to be implemented at no cost to their employer. I want to reiterate, there is no cost to an employer to offer such a benefit. There are actually right now over 20 states about 20 states that are in process of offering such a program. And it's set up much like a College 529 program, where employees have an opportunity to save directly from their own paycheck into a state-facilitated account. We know through lots of research that if people don't have an opportunity to save directly from their paycheck, they won't save. And this has an opportunity to be an employee benefit that employers can offer. In Ohio, we are advancing legislation currently that would establish a task force so that we could establish such an option in our state that would be a benefit to our to people who are working and preparing to save for retirement. So we've already been in collaboration with members of the business community, our state chamber of commerce, our small business associations, the National Federation of Independent Businesses of Ohio are all supportive of us establishing this task force. So if there are employers in the room who'd like more information, I'm happy to talk with you specifically, but we think this would be an incredible opportunity to help people save for retirement so that they have the financial service resources they need to choose as they age.
I'm going to do just like a little level setting and take maybe a different approach around this, because I think education of the Aging Network is so crucial for individuals to know before they retire. Now, there's a lot of aging people in the room, so this might not be the right question, but raise your hand if you've heard of the Older Americans Act. Okay. Yeah, no, that was a fail. Too many people in the room in aging. No, just kidding. The Older Americans Act that was set into legislation in 1965 is federal rules, policies, and funding that govern that every U.S. citizen should be served by an area agency on aging. In Ohio, COAAA serves 8 counties. So what that means is there is some guaranteed federal funding through Older Americans Act for the foundation or the floor. But then we all need to work together to provide all of the different services that we need to fill out that continuum. And what I find really scary and alarming is that individuals, as they're planning for retirement, they know they'll be on a fixed income, they know what that income is, but what they may or may not realize is there isn't a fund out there that's going to guarantee to help pay for your assisted living. There isn't a fund out there that's guaranteed to pay for your long-term care needs unless you qualify for Medicaid financially and through level of care needs. But there's so much misinformation and unfortunately, kind of faith in the system that when I retire, all of my needs will be met. And that's just not the truth. And not only are there gaps in care, it is extremely complex to navigate the system. So I think a lot of education is needed before people get to retirement.
I'd love to comment. I think that, Katie, you are right on. And I think employers have an opportunity to educate their workers about the realities of planning. So as an employee, as you select your benefits, understanding beyond the immediate health care and your immediate needs, and have employers support you in thinking about that. The second thing I'd encourage employers to do is to consider their DEI statements and their DEI work, and see if you include age in that, in those statements and in that work. Because you know what? Many of us, in fact, 30% of current boomers, and an even higher percent of Gen Xers are planning to continue to work. So they want to be able to work and have flexible schedules, perhaps change roles and responsibilities slightly if there are changes to their physical abilities. There are some natural changes to our bodies as we age that are not disease specific, but there are also things that change, such as our vision, our hearing, things that are natural, that are not disease specific. The good news is our older workers have the ability to think in more complex ways than our younger workers. So our brains may be slower to recall information because you know what? We got a lot up there. So we have the ability to think in web-type thinking in different ways. So for employers to think about how can we continue to engage, because we have a workforce crisis when it comes to aging services and supports. We need folks to continue in the workforce and continue contributing. So let's create opportunities to do that, not just with financial incentives and supports and education, but also our policies and procedures within our various employment places of employment.
Thank you. I'm getting the cue from Doug. We have time just for one more question to the panel. But before we do, it is CMC's longstanding tradition to take audience questions. We'll move to questions from our live stream and in-person audiences in just a minute. If you have a question, please make your way over to the microphone now. If you're watching online, please type your questions into the chat. But before we take audience questions, panelists, I have one more question. This is a kind of a long one. We're going to combine it. So, Kalitha, you did bring this up, that majority of Ohioans are not prepared for retirement and even thinking about long-term care environmentally, financially, socially. Many Ohioans are choosing to age in place. Informal long-term care provided an estimated $16.8 billion in long-term care services. Family caregivers offer critical support to older adults. According to your very own 2023 AARP report, approximately 1.4 million family givers in Ohio provided an estimated 1.23 billion hours, that is a billion hours, of care to their parents, spouses, partners, and friends a year, which is a value of about $21 billion in services. No time in history has more care been provided by family members. What should middle-aged and younger generations be doing now to either prepare for retirement and our own long-term care needs? And then conversely, how do we start to have those conversations with our aging families and loved ones about what their, as you shared with your mom, she wants to stay independent. How do we start those conversations now?
Thank you for that question. So AARP, we have a host of resources to help you have these conversations with your loved ones and help with the planning for yourself. After that very hard conversation I had with my mom where she bursted my own bubble, I utilize a resource that we have at AARP called Prepare to Care. And you can access that resource from our website. And it's just a great conversation piece to have with your loved one, because the hardest thing to understand is that your loved one may want to age in a way that you never imagined. They have a vision for their life for the future that maybe you've never considered. And starting with those conversations using the Prepare to Care guide is a great opportunity to do so. For your own benefit, we also have additional guides on our website regarding long-term care planning for yourself or your loved one, even as basic as different types of health conditions you or your loved one may have. So I encourage our audience members to visit aarp.org, where we have these wealth of resources to help with planning for the future. And I also want to note, it's never too late to do this type of planning. You know, you can, obviously earlier is best, but it's never too late to start the process. So I want to lift up our Prepare to Care guide, as well as our long-term services planning resources.
I would also say earlier conversations, to your point, are crucial. When I was at the Alzheimer's Association and I would work on the helpline, people would call in and would ask, you know, what are the assisted livings in my community or the caregivers? And I'd say, go and visit a few and figure what you like and interview all the home health companies and make sure you choose one you like. And if you don't know what they like, know your backup. Those times are gone. There aren't enough caregivers. There's long wait lists for low-income housing complexes. Skilled nursing facilities now are requiring 2 years of private pay before, even if you qualify for Medicaid, before they'll take your Medicaid. So a sense of urgency around these conversations, albeit maybe off-putting, but just knowing that all of the options and choices that used to be there aren't. And so in order to maintain that choice and the ability to pre-plan, start having those conversations earlier.
I second that. It's never too early. Jokingly, I am on my children's neck every day about what my retirement will look like, and they're going to take care of me. So we need those grades in order for you to be able to do that. But I think that, you know, the awareness of that, right? So now my children are thinking constantly, every time I plant that seed, I'm going to be in a position one day where I have to make decisions for my mom. And so I think that it's okay in your own way, in your own space, to initiate conversations. Oftentimes, the seniors that are in our lives are so stuck on that independence that they don't want to have that conversation. My encouragement to you is to not let up. Just find a different way to approach that conversation, because it's critical for you, it's critical for them, and it's critical for our community that we have a plethora of folks that are willing to step up and able to step up to be in that caregiving space. Because as we all have already alluded to, there's not enough workforce, there's not enough money, there'll never be enough facilities, and with all of the rules, unless we all make those calls to our politician to change some of those laws, we're all going to be in a position one day where you need to provide care. One of the things that is not commonly talked about is long-term care insurance. It's not too early to start looking into that, but if you understand, because you've been in this space, Medicare and Medicaid don't cover everything. And so you're going to need to know what the financial landscape is of your senior and of yourselves, and start planning to put those resources in place now.
And I'll add that you start by saying, I love you. I want to make sure that I do what you want. It will be easier for me if I understand what you want. So have that conversation. If you don't have enough knowledge, or your loved one doesn't have enough knowledge to know what decisions need to be considered, call the Area Agency on Aging, call the Franklin County Office on Aging. They have social workers, registered nurses, who can help you think about what are those decisions that need to be made.
It'll be quick.
One more.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, also just like a little bit of a soapbox, that we have to start pushing back against ageism, because if we're all afraid to grow old, or we don't want to grow older, of course we're not going to start thinking about it proactively. And so that, first and foremost, each of us here today, own our age, be proud about it, spread that awareness, don't make the jokes of, oh, you know, another year older. That also is a foundation to making sure that people feel good about aging and therefore feel comfortable pre-planning for it.
Thank you. Thank you. Doug Buchanan is in the back with CMC. He's curating questions from our live stream audience. Doug, what's your first question?
Tasha, thank you very much, and thank you to today's panelists. I have two almost grown daughters myself, so when I am ready to be taken care of, I plan to be very cooperative. We have lots of questions here. Great questions at CMC always have two things in common, right? They take less than 30 seconds to ask, and what punctuation mark do they end in? A question mark, yes, thank you. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can today. Our first question from the live stream audience, J.C. White Oak asks, I participated in Columbus's Link Us process and steadily watched young city government professionals drive the design prioritizing walkable, bikeable over elder transportation issues. How will organizations best bridge the generation gap so that younger folks in the workplace are not making ageist decisions that negatively impact older residents?
Give it to me. It's mine. No, just kidding. Okay, well, I'll start and I'll be quick because obviously other people have stuff to say. I will say that I personally was involved in the beginning planning sessions for Link Us. They had a specific committee around accessibility and aging. If you know aging individuals, you know we are tenacious, and there is no community conversation going on around here without us making sure that we're there and that we're heard. Again, do we have work to do? Do we have improvements to be made? Yes. But making sure that we're at those meetings so that the decisions are being made are for all ages and not just younger professionals. I do feel really confident that that lens is there.
Yeah, I'll just add that CODA has had the Age-Friendly Innovation Center and our amazing staff out for one of their tours. And we provided some feedback about some of the ageist perspectives that were being purported in the publication of what's coming ahead. They listened. They're making changes and adjustments to their messaging because we are not just talking about a frail grandma, grandpa who's taking their grandchild to the park. Right? We're talking about active, engaged older persons and persons with disabilities who will be able to benefit. And this is an example of where, as a community, we need to come together and support this initiative in order to make alternative transportation options available for all. Because if it helps folks who are older and have disabilities, it helps everybody. So we all need to come together and show up and vote.
All good points. I can tell you that the Franklin County Office on Aging does offer transportation to our Franklin County seniors for both medical appointments as well as what we refer to as expanded transportation. Barb Sullivan, who is my resident historian, shares a story of when we implemented that, how two sisters lived on opposite sides of town, hadn't been able to see each other for years because neither drive and didn't have access to a bus route. When we implemented that, they were able to see each other. So I want to put that out there. The second thing, I think that that is an excellent question and a very valid point. And what we will be doing here shortly, and is actually out there now, is conducting an aging blueprint to examine all of that information and bring seniors and those lived experiences to the table. When we're done with this work, we will have an organized set of action plans or action steps and goals with the voice of seniors at the table in that planning. And so I just wanted to put that out there to let you know that we are well aware that there are many spaces where senior voices and lived experiences have not been considered, but the Franklin County Office on Aging aims to do something about that.
I'm Carol McGuire. A topic I haven't heard mentioned, but which is of extreme importance to most retirees and seniors, is having a pet in their lives. Oh, I love it. And by the way, thank all of you. It's so nice to know we've got such a group of experts among us who are so passionate about assisting with retirement and aging. The importance that pets play in anyone's life is of great significance. And I know that we have a number of agencies, not only well, it's Columbus Humane now, but that are assisting in many different ways, whether it's with food for Meals on Wheels that they can leave for owners and so forth. But sometimes that pet is the only contact that a senior may have. What kinds of planning are you doing in your various agencies to accommodate the needs of pets in folks' lives?
I've been waiting for you. I do. So at Franklin County, we have partnered with our Franklin County Dog Shelter to launch an initiative called Mission Possible, because you're exactly correct. We work with a doctor on a different initiative who is quadruple board certified, who shared with us that social isolation is the equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It reduces life expectancy by 7 years. And so what we've done in our partnership with Mission Possible, PAWSIBLBE, a play on possible is everything that you just mentioned. Food sometimes is not affordable, and we know that older adults will not eat and give their meals to their pets, right? So the Franklin County Dog Shelter has programs that allow older adults to foster to adopt, as well as volunteer. So the pet component, whether you want to have that pet come home or whether you want to engage in some social activity, you can go and volunteer at the dog shelter, either to pet the dogs, walk the dogs, but they also, through a collaboration with Ohio State, now have a garden where they grow foods to feed those dogs, and they need help with that gardening. So whether it is, again, you want to bring that pet home, or whether you want to just have some social activity that's available to you through pets, please reach into our Franklin County Dog Shelter and ask about Mission Possible and get involved.
Thank you so much for that question and for that information. I want to bring up a topic related to pets that we haven't talked about today, and that's the impact of climate change and how in our community we are seeing more and more extreme weather events, extreme heat, tornadoes, right? We have been living this most recently, for sure, and we will continue to have extreme weather events. I have the privilege to be working with my colleague, Dr. Smitha Rao, through the support of the Area Agency on Aging with our older adults who are living in affordable housing. And we know, as Shonda pointed out, that animals help us live better and help us live longer. We also know if there is some type of extreme weather event in which individuals need to leave their apartments or their homes, they will not do so because of their animals. They don't have a place to go. If the animal is not a designated service animal, there are many, many fewer choices and options. So individuals are staying in unsafe conditions. Heat kills more people than any other type of extreme weather event. Heat kills people because they do not want to leave their apartments. They do not want to leave the animals that they love and are their companions. And so we are working in collaboration with the Area Agency on Aging to look at these issues in affordable housing properties to say, how do we support individuals in extreme weather events, and really importantly, their pets. So thank you very much for raising that question.
They do have a temporary housing program for dogs. Unfortunately, we can only extend it to dogs, but in those instances, the Franklin County Dog Shelter will house your dog for a temporary solution in the event of a crisis. It could just be that you need to go to the hospital, or you need to go out of town or anything like that. So I wanted to uplift that resource is available to Franklin County dogs.
Thank you. We only have about 3 minutes left, so we'll try to get to as many questions as we can.
Hi there, Mike Cochran with Mid-Ohio Food Collective, formerly known as Mid-Ohio Food Bank. We've talked a lot today about the many ways in which seniors need help: housing, transportation, home care, and of course, far too many seniors in our community are food insecure, and no senior should go hungry. But many seniors are also in a position to give back and give help. And Dr. DeBelkishoni talked briefly about the importance of social connection. And at the Food Collective, many of our all-star volunteers find both social connection and meaning through helping feed their neighbors. So can you all talk a little bit about what our community can do to support seniors in giving back in that sort of way?
Thank you so much for that comment and for the reframe. So I like to think about it in a reciprocal sense. So not only what can we do to help our older neighbors, but also what can they do to help all of us as well. So whether it's mentorship or, you know, taking out each other's trash. My neighbor actually snow blows my driveway, which is awesome. She's 75. I should be doing that, but I'm not. But I think one of the important things to do is continue to find what brings passion to people, what fills their cup, what gives them meaning, and then make sure you just modify it as needed to be able to continue to meet that life's purpose. I will say that when I was at the Alzheimer's Association, we created volunteer opportunities for people with dementia, and we brought them to the Mid-Ohio Food Collective, and we helped sort the food in the boxes. And so there's always opportunities, no matter what the ability or interest level, and it's so crucial to make sure that we're connecting people of all ages to each other through those opportunities.
That amongst AARP, the life of our organization are volunteers. In Ohio, we have about 1.4 million members, but we have hundreds of volunteers in our state. And I keep pointing to the two who are sitting at our table who help us advance, three volunteers sitting at our table who help us advance the work we're doing in advocacy and social connections through the events we have throughout the state and throughout the country. So AARP, our work with our volunteers is absolutely critical.
Good afternoon, Joy Bivens. Just really quick, what policy work is being done to ensure that there's affordability for caregivers who do have to place their aging family member into facilities? Because many times our folks, even with Medicaid, there's these things called Medicaid beds or, private pay beds. With the increasing aging growing population, everyone cannot afford what it takes in order when those decisions are made. So is there any policy work being done? Because we do know, unfortunately, facilities are cherry picking, and I know that's a terrible word to use, but it really is because of profit and loss margins. But is there anything being done in that space? Because there's a lot of, waiting lists.
Yeah, there are a lot of waiting lists, and there's so much work to be done in policy. One thing that will be occurring in January of 2026, Ohio Department of Medicaid is rolling out what they're calling Next Gen MyCare, and that is looking at individuals that qualify for Medicare and Medicaid, that they financially and physically qualify to be in a long-term care facility, but they can receive those services in the home on sliding scale. Some don't have any out-of-pocket, but there's definitely work and advocacy being done to blend and make that experience easier.
We were very fortunate to find my grandmother a place within 3 weeks, but we did too get the runaround and the waiting and the private pay, and on average, people are paying anywhere from $4,000 to $9,000 a month, and that's just for the bed, not adding in all the other care. So safe and affordable housing for our seniors should not be for the fortunate few. Everyone, I do wish we had more time. Clearly, CMC and team, look, you are going to have to do a round two because there's a lot more we could have gotten to today. I got the wrap-up signal. I'm going to turn it over to our today's second sponsor representative, Sandra Moody Gresham with the Isabel Ridgeway Foundation, a historic foundation, by the way, here right in Columbus, for concluding remarks. Sandra, the podium is yours.
Wonderful. This has been such a powerful session. The message, the fact that we all will need this, right? We're going to be caregivers or care receivers, right? So we all will need it. So there's an old adage that I've learned in my work, and I work in insurance and long-term care, so I'm glad to hear some of those words mentioned today. But the saying simply goes, if you don't die, you get old. And when you get old, you need care. That's it, right? And that's what we're talking about. So thank you for reminding all of us of our responsibility to take care of our aging community, because one day we are that aging community. So I am proud to serve as one of the founding trustees of the Isabel Ridgeway Foundation. Our mission is simply to where we see a world where we treat aging as elders, right? And specifically to improve the quality of life in the systems that impact aging African Americans. Since 1912, Miss Isabel Ridgway quietly fought to bring dignity and comfort to the elderly, impoverished, and disenfranchised African Americans in her community. She founded what was called at that time the Old Folks Home of Franklin County, where residents were cared for by receiving stability, safety, and a sense of belonging. Over the next 100 years, this care center aided countless seniors and their families throughout Central Ohio. Though the work began in 1912, it's just as necessary today, as we learn. Though life expectancy of African Americans has increased, but for far too many, their quality of life has not. And there's a disproportionate number of them living in poverty without access to many of the services and resources we just talked about today. The Isabel Ridgway is proud to partner with many of the organizations here in this room to provide funding, build coalitions, and sponsor research to better serve specific needs of the community's elders. And we look forward to having new conversations, creating new partnerships with those of you we have not had the opportunity to do so. We want to thank today's forum sponsors, the AARP Ohio, Franklin County Board of Commissioners, the Isabel Ridgway Foundation, and our partner, King Business Interiors. And we thank the Ellis for hosting in this beautiful facility, the Center of Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, and the Columbus Dispatch for supporting today's live stream. But a very special appreciation to our speakers, right? Holly Belko-Shoney, sorry about that. Katie White, Kalitha Williams, Chanda Ringo, and of course our fantastic host, Ms. Tasha Booker. Can we give them all a round of applause? So there is no forum next week as CMC switches to a new online registration system. So make plans to join us on August 21st. And the next forum is entitled Media, Democracy, and the 2024 Election. So you know that should be exciting. So we thank you all. Everybody have a great afternoon.